Okay, so Khaleesi tweets out here, the Gaza genocide is Netanyahu's only political lifeline. He is using Palestinian blood to avoid his day in court. Now, that is a headline from the Jerusalem Post. In light of renewed fighting in Gaza, PM Benjamin Netanyahu's Tuesday testimony has been canceled. Netanyahu will hold an emergency security cabinet meeting at 11 a.m. Now, that was just a brief sort of news bulletin on Jerusalem Post, but the Times of Israel actually had a more comprehensive article about this. So Netanyahu's testimony in graft trial canceled for the day amid shock Gaza offensive. So, yes, his next day in court is now canceled because of what he did. And we're supposed to believe that that timing is just a coincidence. No, this obviously has all the hallmarks of a wag the dog. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu will not testify as planned in his corruption trial on Tuesday following Israel's surprise attack on the Gaza Strip, which ended a 2-month ceasefire. In his request that the court cancel the hearing, Netanyahu said the prosecution had approved the motion. Hours ago, the IDF commenced a military operation in the Gaza Strip, read the request. This morning at 11, an urgent security consultation will take place that will include the Prime Minister, Defense Minister, and the heads of the IDF security apparatus. The hostilities were renewed as protest groups were set to hold a mass demonstration in Jerusalem Tuesday night over the premier's plan to oust Shin Bet chief Ronen Bar. Critics of the premier have cast the plan as a bid to shirk responsibility for the Hamas onslaught and to thwart a Shin Bet probe against his top aides for alleging ties to Qatar, which backs Hamas. So it looks like they are starting to suspect some foul play regarding October 7th itself. The Walla News side noted Barr was not among the security chiefs said to be participating in the urgent security consultation cited in Netanyahu's request to cancel Tuesday's hearing. Netanyahu has frequently requested that hearings in his corruption trial be canceled so he could handle the war in Gaza. Hearings were also canceled for 3 weeks following the premier's prostate surgery in late December. Got out of that one, too. Called in sick that time. Last month, judges granted Netanyahu's request to hear his testimony twice a week instead of 3 times a week as originally planned. The premier had failed to come to court 3 times in any week since his testimony began in December. Lawyers on both sides of the trial, now in its 5th year, have said the premier's testimony could last until April of 2026, so 1 more full year. Netanyahu is on trial in 3 corruption cases. He faces charges of fraud and breach of trust in Case 1000 and Case 2000, and charges of bribery, as well as fraud and breach of trust in Case 4000. Case 1000 revolves around allegations that Netanyahu and his wife Sarah received expensive gifts illicitly from Hollywood media mogul Arnon Milchan, worth some $700,000 and
$191,000.
$191,000 US. I mean 700,000 whatever their current shekels. Yeah, 700,000 whatever their currency is what I mean. Yeah, and that Netanyahu violated conflict of interest laws when he provided Milchan with assistance in renewing his long-term U.S. residency visa and sought to help him with tax issues. In Case 2000, the prime minister is accused of fraud and breach of trust over his alleged attempt to reach a quid pro quo agreement with the publisher of the Yedioth Aharonot newspaper, Arnon Moses, whereby Yedioth would give the prime minister more positive media coverage in exchange for legislation weakening its key rival, the Israel Hayom Free Sheet. Case 4000, see if this fact pattern sounds at all familiar. Also known as the Bezek Walla case, is the most serious the prime minister faces, in which he is accused of authorizing regulatory decisions that financially benefited Bezek Telecommunications giant shareholder Elovich by hundreds of millions of shekels. In return, Netanyahu allegedly received favorable media coverage from Walla News site, which Elovich also owned. Netanyahu denies wrongdoings and claims the charges were fabricated in a political coup, led by the police and state prosecution. In his testimony, the premier has clashed with judges and railed against the media, which he says is biased against him. Well, he certainly has a brother in Donald Trump in that last respect. So, yeah, when you add all of this together, it looks like the timing of this was no coincidence at all. And this, like I said, just has all the hallmarks of a wag the dog operation.
Yeah, I mean, it's clear he has to remain prime minister in order to not be put in prison for other reasons. And I always like to clarify, it's not because of his war crimes, as you just showed there.
No, that's all good.
There is no concern by the Knesset or even most Israeli people. I think it's like 90% support basically genocide in Gaza. They just want the people that are upset with him just want the hostages back. So they're upset that he hasn't allowed that to happen. But it is amazing how many Israelis continue to support this absolute disgusting genocide. But yeah, I mean, he's utterly corrupt in so many ways. I mean, it is hilarious. It shows how upside down our world is that, like, he can commit genocide on a daily basis, and the thing he's got a charge against him for is accepting $191,000 of gifts. You know, I would argue that 10 seconds in Gaza is a worse crime than everything he's being charged with.
Yeah. And yet, even with these charges pending, more standing ovations than anyone in the history of Congress. Many of these people in Congress deeply concerned about impropriety and corruption in the Trump administration.
Are there any, like, what's the last foreign leader to address Congress? Oh, Zelensky, but there aren't that many. Like,
yeah, and he even did better than him. Netanyahu broke the record. Yeah, broke the record. That may have even been a record for everybody, not just a record for ovations of foreign leaders. It was a record for any person Lincoln, to ever speak
more
before
than
Congress.
Anybody.
Yes.
Yeah,
more than Barack Obama.
I view
better than Lincoln. Better than Lincoln. Yeah. You did better than Abraham Lincoln.
I view Netanyahu as better than Lincoln. Absolutely.
Yeah.
We lead with our values.
We lead with our values. Yeah. So, you know, it was obvious this was going to end at some point. It's obvious that Netanyahu, and this kind of, I mean, this story kind of illustrates where Netanyahu's at, sort of between a rock and a hard place, because, you know, these strikes he found necessary, just as he feels it necessary to keep the war going to save his own ass. On the other hand, he's also under tremendous pressure to get these hostages back home. And so it was always just, I think, a waiting game for him to see, okay, how many can I get back before I have to go back in? That's why he didn't take Trump's invitation to do it a month ago. He's figured I can get a couple dozen more.
But let's also be clear, this is not the only reason he's genociding Gaza.
Oh, no, of course not.
There is plenty of evidence that the far right wingers of the Israeli establishment have had their eye on quote unquote greater Israel for a long time, stealing more land, stealing Gaza, stealing the West Bank, stealing land from Syria, which they're currently doing, land from Lebanon. They've had their eye on this greater Israel for a very long time. And so he's kind of trying to do both. He's achieving the ethnic cleansing they've long wanted, while also bombing at specific times to try and delay his corruption charges.
Please clap.